It's important to walk through how to create a brand new game object in UModelerX using a mix of sketch-style modeling tools and modifiers. This workflow is perfect for quickly blocking out shapes, refining them non-destructively, and turning simple lines and faces into a polished 3D form. We'll start by sketching the basic structure with tools like polyline, rectangle, and push-pull, then layer in modifiers to shape it, and then adjust and fine-tune the model without ever losing the original mesh. By the end, we'll have a clean, game-ready, playful mailbox entirely built and made inside of Unity. All right, so let's start modeling our little mailbox. And what we're going to do is use the tools that we discussed regarding SketchUp style modeling and a few modifiers. This shouldn't take too long. This is just an example. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create a box, and I'll go ahead and click a box out here. The box is going to kind of start as kind of the base of our mailbox here. And then what I'll do again now is create another box. So I'll just create a completely separate object and create another box here. And what I'll do is just drag it on the side just like so. And bring that guy up just like that. And I'll move it over. Great. Perfect. And then this is going to serve as the base for the actual top of the mailbox. And what we're going to do is go ahead and move this up just like that. Great. So this is going to be a piece of wood here. And then this one here will be a piece of wood. Now what I want to do is also make sure it has a mesh collider, and this one also has a mesh collider. Great. And using mesh colliders on this is going to allow you to make sure that when you draw a rectangle on an object, it actually shows up on the object. Perfect. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is draw another box. But this time, let's see, this is going to be a little different. We're going to go ahead and do box. And then on top of this, we're going to draw this square and do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull this out like so. Now for the box underneath, I'm going to make this a little smaller. And I'll pull this one in as well. And then I'll go back to this part, and this is going to serve as where our mail gets placed. It's going to be a stylized mailbox. So I'll go ahead and move this out like this here, and then I'll go ahead and move this up like so. So this is going to be kind of the height of our mailbox, kind of eyeballing this here. And the goal is simply to get a general shape. So what we're going to do now is actually use a couple of different tools to get through this. We want to create an arc. So there's a couple ways we can do that. We can actually select these two edges, and we can use the bevel tool, and we can change the bevel by adding some segments, and we can change this, and we can get that shape just like that. But you can also use the arc as well. So you can take this, click and drag, and when you do that, you can do that, and then you can just take the push-pull and push that all the way through your game object if you want to do it that way. But for now, there's so many different ways to approach it. I think this way will work just fine. And what I'll do here is continue with this. Now, we want a door opening for the front of the mailbox and also for the back. So what I'll do is copy and paste this piece here. And then I'm going to take the vertices here, and I'm going to kind of reduce those. And I'm going to use our pivot point here to center on that object. Great. And then I'm just going to move it into position here. So that's going to serve as the front. But our door should be a little larger than the opening. So I'm going to increase that size to about there. And that seems about right. We can also do a little bit more. Since it is a stylized object, you can do it this way as well. And what I'll do is leave it kind of that thick. I think that will work out perfectly. All right. And then next thing we're going to do is create the latch for our mailbox here. So what I'll do is go ahead and create another game object, and I'll go ahead and use my box tool again. And this time I'm going to draw it directly on the top here, and I'll do something like this. And it's a little crooked there just because of where we placed it, but that's okay. What I'll do is go ahead and delete this and do it again, but this time what I'll do is make sure that it is exactly here. All right, perfect. And then I'll go ahead and extrude that out, push that out there. And what I want to do is take this face like this, pull this here, and I want to extrude out our faces here. And I'm going to go ahead and do it this way and just simply extrude these out just like so, and this will work just fine. Now, another way we can do it, just to keep it simple, we could actually just simply take that and just do something like this. And this works just fine as well. And it just depends on how you want to approach it. And then I can simply take my edge and pull this in and up, just like so. And I can do the same for this edge here. Move that back just like that. And of course, we have our face here, and we can kind of make that smaller. Great. And so now we have this little latch here for the mailbox here that's going to keep that door closed and tidy. And I'll just go ahead and pull these vertices out just a little bit. Perfect. So now we have our little mailbox latch. It's looking pretty interesting so far. So the next thing we want is that little side thing that most common mailboxes have. I guess it's just to tell you that there's mail there. So what I'll do is go ahead and use another box. And what you'll notice is that using boxes is the simplest way to model, and it is the quickest way to get the shapes that you want, because you simply want to focus on silhouette and just getting the shape that you need first before you go into any detail. You can kind of think of it like you're blocking out your mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'll push that out like so. And then I'll go ahead and bring this down a bit. Let me make sure both of those are selected, down a bit, and make this just a bit thicker. Great. So that is looking pretty good. Maybe this can be a little shorter, but nonetheless, that is looking good. Great. All right. And so now that we have this here, what we want to do is know that this is going to rotate on a pivot so it curls or turns down. So what we're going to do is create another shape. And this shape is going to be let's see, a cylinder. And we can just go ahead and take the cylinder and draw it right about here. And we're going to pull that out a little bit and change our view. And then we can go ahead and move that in just like so. Great. All right. And so now we have our little cylinder there. That looks pretty good. And I think it's looking great. It looks like we have the basic shape of this mailbox. And before we add a back here, we want to make some other changes. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and use a couple more tools. So I'm going to pull this out here. I'm going to pull this door and this out here. And what I'm going to use is a tool called the Inset tool. And the Inset tool is great because it's going to take the shape, as you can see, just like that. And it's just going to help us create that opening for this mailbox. So I'll make it pretty thick there. And then we're going to use the push-pull tool, again, going back to our tool set for SketchUp modeling. And we're going to go ahead and push that in. Now, of course, you could push this all the way through and have something like that or whatever you want to do. It just kind of depends on what you're going for. But we can do this all the way through because realistically, the door on the front is for putting the mail in, and you can use the door on the back to pull the mail out. It's all depending on how you want your mailbox. But in our case, I think it's completely fine to just open your mail from the front to get your mail out. So we'll just go ahead and create that. So now we have an opening there, again, using that SketchUp style modeling with the push-pull tool. Great. Now we have that. I'm going to move these back into a position. And it's looking pretty good so far. But now let's start playing with some other tools in regards to the modifiers. So what I'm going to do, and with our modifiers, what we want to do is these two pieces here, this bottom part and this part here, these are basically wood pieces. So I want these to be a little less straight edged. And so we want to kind of do that. Also, let's make this one here a little smaller. So I'll go ahead and push that in like so and move this in a little bit as well. And so it's kind of like it's inside of this box here. Great. So we have that wood piece there, and it's going to be kind of like a pole or a beam there. And so now we have that beam, and then we have this piece here. Now to do that, what we're going to do is use a couple of modifiers. Our modifier is going to be, the best modifier we're going to use is the subdivide modifier. But what we want to do, if we use a subdivide right now and we use it, you'll notice that it collapses all of it. And that's because we need to constrain our edges. So because the modifiers aren't just, they're not destructive, you can select the source mesh still. And then what we're going to do is use some loop cuts to kind of control that. So what we're going to do is cut closer to this edge like so, like here. And then we're going to go ahead and cut on the edge here. And then I'll cut on this edge like so here. And I'll make sure that this edge is cut as well at the bottom. And so you want to make sure it's all constrained. And so we're going to go ahead and click here and also here. And so that's going to be constrained all the way around. And so what I'll do now is go ahead and use our modifier for subdividing. So we have the 0 and then we have the 1 subdivision level. So if I hit the 1, as you notice, it rounded our edges much better. This looks a lot better, and it's going to look more like stylized wood. And so what we're going to do now, we're going to do the same thing to the other mesh here. So I'm going to go ahead and do our loop cuts. And actually, before we do our loop cuts, we can go ahead and add that subdivide. And again, just showing you what's going to happen. But if I go to my source, and you can just see exactly how that controls that piece by adding in these edges there. And you can get some really nice shapes by doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and add in all the edges I need just to make sure that it looks like the piece of wood that I expect. So we need to constrain it on this edge here like so, and also constrain it on this edge as well. So that's going to look much better, and it keeps our poly count still down. It's not too high. Great. So we go back into subdivide, and there you have it. So now you have those two pieces of objects there, and they look a lot smoother on the edges, and you can still go ahead and edit this if you need to. You can still go in and move things around if you need to. Not a big deal. It's just something to note. All right, great. All right, and so I'll just kind of move this way a little bit. Great. So now we have that. And again, using the modifiers are really great for modeling. And if we, for any reason, we want to redo it, we can really just take it off, as you can see, and rename it if we want to as well. Great. So another thing we want to do this with is going to be this door. Now this door edges are too sharp. And so what we're going to do is add some loop cuts to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add the loop cuts. I'm going to put one about here and maybe one maybe about right there. That should look pretty good. And let's go ahead and take a look and see how the subdivide is going to play with that. So that's not too great. So what we want to do is go ahead and do another loop cut. Now we can do a loop cut, but in this case, I may actually want to change how I approach it. Now, instead of using a subdivide modifier, you can very well use edges. So I can select these edges and I can select these edges here. I can do all of the edges. And instead of a modifier, we could very well use a bevel, and that would work pretty good. And we can actually control the different segments. So we don't want that many. So maybe we want something like this, possibly. That looks pretty good. It's nice and round and very cartoony. Maybe we want to tighten that up a little bit, so we can tighten it up just a little bit. So that looks great. Okay, great. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And so now we have that edge just like that, and that's not too shabby. All right, and so the next thing we can do is go ahead and evaluate how big that is. Maybe we can make this door just a little smaller. So I'll go ahead and scale that down just a little bit. And there you go. So that looks pretty good. Great. And so now what we want to do is take a look at this here. And so I'm going to do the same thing I did to the wood, because I want these edges to be a little smoother and I want to use our modifiers a little bit. So I'll go ahead and do the same thing with our loop cuts and make sure they're just close. If the loop cuts are too close, then the edge is going to be really sharp, and we don't want sharp edges right now. So I'm going to kind of keep them a little far away from that point. And I'm going to put them every area that I can here. And what I'll do is put it down here as well. Great. And so that looks pretty good, and I think that's going to work. Let's go ahead and add the subdivide modifier to it and see what it gives us. And you can see we have an issue here, but what we can do is we need to tighten this up. And so we're going to go ahead and put a loop in this section right about here. And there you go. So now we're kind of tighten that area up, and it looks much, much better. Great. And again, you can also still go in and edit this closer you bring that, depending on how much you want. Great. And if you want to even add some variation to your object, because maybe this is also wood, we can actually kind of do some things like this. So that's really nice. Awesome. All right. And so now we have that piece. And now let's take a look at our little bolt here. This is basically the turning mechanism here. And we always want to do our best to add all the little things that helps bring it together. And so what I'll do is go ahead and add a loop cut to this one as well, because I want to apply this subdivide. So again, if I do it, it looks okay, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and add a loop cut to it to kind of control that a little bit. So I'm going to put one at the edge because I want this one to be really tight. And see, I'm going to go back and make sure that that's there. And then I'm going to put one here that isn't so tight to that edge. And I want to go back here to subdivide and see. So that gives us a little better edge loop there, and looks a little round, looks about right. All right. Now, another way to approach this, just for clarity, you don't have to, again, add those edge loops. You can simply do beveling. That will work again as well. And we can do the bevel on this, and that will work pretty good. So I can go ahead and change the width so that it looks a little better with the face count, and we can do something like that. So to me, that looks cleaner in terms of the polygons and the faces and everything. So I think that will look pretty good. All right. And last but not least, we have our little guy up here. Now, if I were to just go ahead and add a subdivide modifier to this, we're going to go ahead and hit the 1. That looks pretty cool. It's not too bad, but we want a little bit more control with that. So I'll just go ahead and add some loop cuts. So I can add a loop cut here, maybe we want to do something like right here. Maybe that helps. Maybe something here would help. And let's just kind of get an idea to see. Not too bad. And maybe I'll just move it down a little bit. And that's not too bad. Great. All right. And so now we have our mailbox looking pretty good, but we're not quite done yet because this is a stylized mailbox. And so we still want to use some other things. Now, we have this subdivide on this beam here, this wood beam, but I'm going to now add another modifier on top of this. And I'm going to do an FFD here. And what I want is to make this wood kind of taper out a little bit. So I'll pivot that. And now I want to center it so that when I do this here, we're getting a nice gradual pivot there. And then we can do the same thing here as well, just to kind of make that do that. If you want, you can kind of move this in just like this. It just depends on what you're going for. But for the most part, that is going to give us a nice variation in the wood without it looking like a complete bendable, like a non-organic object. We want to kind of add a little bit of life to it, right? So we have that there. All right, and so now that looks a little better, and we can do the same thing to this one here. We'll just go ahead and add that FFD to it, and then I'll just go ahead and do the same thing. We can add this here where it kind of fans out, and then I'll just bring it down. And then I can do the same thing to the back where it fans out. Bring it down, and I can even collapse it a little bit. Fans out, collapse, and bring it up a little bit. Just like that. And so now we have some unique pieces of bark or wood or whatever we got going on, some planks here that was used, and that is looking great. All right, so for the most part, this is pretty much done, and it's looking like a mailbox. Now, what we want to do now is change the pivot point on this just for fun. We can go ahead and change this pivot point and place it right where it would rotate, just like so. And I'll move that there and look from the front and kind of move it where it would actually be. And that looks good. And so now that we've placed this, we just need to go ahead and hit Gizmo location. And now we should have a nice pivot for our gadget here. And there you go. Awesome. And of course, we have this here as well. And now this isn't rotated, so we could add a pivot on this as well. So I'll go ahead and put the pivot here. And let's assume that maybe there was like a lever. We could go to that level of detail, but say there's like a latch in here, so this would fold down. And we'll go ahead and put that pivot there, and I'll do Gizmo location. And there you have it. And so now we have this mailbox that does this. So it looks pretty cool. And now it's all complete. Great. So I hope you enjoyed this. This is a quick example of how you can use tools, SketchUp style modeling, not just for architecture, but for your game objects to quickly generate your shapes and everything to be used in your projects.